name's Jessica Lowe. Today I'm going to be teaching you some basic watercolor techniques that you can use in landscape painting. If you enjoy my lesson today, you can join me in a 4-week online interactive course that I'm hosting with Branson Regional Arts Council. Tune in towards the end of the video to find out more. Let's get started. Okay, for this project you'll need some watercolor paper. This is probably your most important material. Here I have 140-pound hot press watercolor paper. You'll also need some watercolor paints. I use a variety of Winsor & Newton and Daniel Smith watercolors. I would recommend both of them. You'll also need a variety of paintbrushes, some sort of water basin, masking, scotch or painter's tape, and some paper towels. Okay, today I'm going to be doing a simple gradient backwash with some colorful mountains in the bottom, in the foreground. I'm not going to pencil sketch any of it. If you would like to, just pencil sketch a couple of, long range soft mountains. I am going to put a little sun right here, but I am not going to put an outline around it because that would not look good later. In this video I used masking fluid. You don't have to use masking fluid. You can do the same thing I achieved here, which is blocking off my little sun for my landscape with a piece of masking tape or blue painter's tape that you cut in a circle and stick right to your paper. So I'm going to be trying to make a soft blue and a soft pink. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of my ultramarine blue here. That should be good. I'm going to get a little bit of this rose. And also add a little bit of yellow to make it a little more orange. There we go. I'm going to use my painter's tape to tape down my paper. This not only will give me a nice edge around the paper, it'll also limit bending and warping so that when it dries flat. Okay. So I'm going to take a big flat brush here. And I'm just going to swipe it over the whole entire painting. But now that I see that it's equally saturated, I'm going to make a gradient. So a gradient is when a color changes from dark to light. I'm going to get my blue, my tealish blue that we pre-mixed, and I'm going to lay it on the top of my sky, and then I'm going to start coming down. Why we laid that water there first is it helps us to pre-blend. If I was doing this on a dry piece of paper, I would be making very clear brush strokes. And then I'm just pulling the paint down. Anytime that I make a mark with fresh paint, I'm keeping it high. That way the middle is going to be nice and blended. Just right at the top here. Pull it back down. There we go. There's the gradient. Went dark to light. Okay. Now, starting at the opposite end, we're going to run our pink peach color that we made. We're going to start at the bottom and we're going to move up. So I'm going to bring it up about maybe halfway. And you can see my paper it's starting to warp a little bit. That does become a problem because your water can kind of settle in those valleys that the paper is creating. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish up this blend and then I'm going to allow this to dry and stop working on it. Now that it's dry, we're going to work on the mountains. I'm going to go ahead and remove the sun's masking fluid for now. We probably will add a little bit of tint of color to that, but I'll leave it alone for now. Okay, and now I'm going to create a horizon line. I'm using Winsor & Newton colorless art masking fluid. You can use any sort of masking fluid or tape for this. This is just the brand I prefer. And I'm actually going to remove the outer tape before this dries, because if I allowed it to dry, the masking tape, the masking fluid might bond with the tape, and then when I pull it off, it can pull off my masking fluid line. So I actually want to do that kind of quickly. I want to paint it on there, and then I want to remove these guiding pieces of tape. Do not let that dry. Now that we've allowed it to dry and it's just slightly tacky to the touch, we can move on to the next step, which will be to paint a range of mountains over the top of the horizon line, and then we'll do a water reflection underneath it. I'm going to use some non-traditional colors. I'm going to use a little bit more of a purpley pink to create my mountain range rather than what would be traditionally probably green. You can use really whatever color you like. You can add the complement of a color to mute its vibrancy and bring it down without, you know, adding black and darkening the color. See, now it's more of a kind of a natural, dark, softer pink. And I'm just gonna, you know, it doesn't have to be very specific. I'm just gonna put some mountains. You'll notice I painted my mountain that's up front first. The reason for that is, as I use my colors, I'm gonna add more water to them from my water basin. This will lighten my pink, which will look good as I add in another mountain, because if this mountain is slightly lighter than the mountain in front of it, it will look like it's further off in the distance. And then even more so, we'll do on the very last mountain that we maybe just let peak. Right here. Maybe a little over there. Okay, I'm actually going to let this kind of puddle here. You can see it's making its own texture. I'm going to take advantage of the natural watercolor effects that happen as it kind of puddles. And then in the bottom section of the painting where our water would be, I'm going to use a flat brush. And I'm going to be going back and forth, creating straight lines that skip just a little. And this is why you want to use a flat brush, because you get these really sharp edges. So you're looking kind of for the general shape of the mountains you painted above. You know, like this one's taller, so I made the reflection come down a little further. This one's shorter, so the reflection kind of ends. Doesn't have to be perfect. Nature is almost never perfect. Okay, we're gonna let that dry again. I know there's a lot of in between drying, but that's watercolor for you. If I was to paint on this right now as wet as it is, you would see that the colors will disperse. I won't get a nice sharp line that I'm gonna look for in the shadows later in the texture. So it's not 100% dry, but I think it's dry enough for me to start working with. So now I'm gonna mix up a darker shade of the color I was actually using. I'm gonna go in with a fan brush here. A fan brush is any brush shaped like this, pushed down at the base of the fibers and spread out. You can use these for grass and trees, and I'm going to use them for the texture of my mountains today. I'm just going to kind of be rolling it around. And if you don't have a fan brush, you can accomplish the same thing, like I said, with a round brush. Just going in and blotting. But I'm thinking I'm going to get a lot more texture with this fan brush, using this fan brush, than I would with my round brush. I don't want my texture to get too repetitive, so I like to rotate my brush and turn it to the side. If it gets too repetitive, it'll be noticeable. Like I said, nature's never perfect, so you don't want it to look ever anything repetitive or perfect. Okay, I've diluted the paint with some water. That will lighten its color. Now I'm going to do kind of the same thing back here, but maybe a little more broken up and less specific, because it's further away. So if my details get softer, then it will also add to that illusion of depth that we're going for right now. So I'm going to leave this back one texture free to make it look like it's really faded. I've mixed some more of my purple, my dark purple color, because I was really running low. And that way I can go down here and I can kind of imitate some of the shadows I've made on my mountain range. And you can see that the fan brush also does a really nice job of creating horizontal lines that make it kind of look like it has waves. Now we're going to mix a really dark purple blue, kind of like a grayish purple blue. We're going to put a little black in it, a little purple, and a little blue. If you don't have purple, again, you can mix blue, red, and black. And I'm going to start laying this shadow color in behind. Do a little bit of a rolling texture to kind of keep true to the texture we produced with our pink. Just play with it till you feel it's right, but remember, don't overdo it, and to mimic your colors and your shapes right above it. Remember to keep those little white lines in between, because it gives the illusion of waves. Now just to add a little extra, I'm going to go in with a blue. And just add a couple of transient waves, kind of out by themselves, just to give water texture. I might dilute that and go back with a little bit of softer ones. I'm going to mix a gray, a purplish gray, by adding quite a bit of water. I'm going to go around the edge of I'm going to make it a moon. If it was a sun, obviously, if it was the sun, obviously it wouldn't have a shadow, so. And then we're going to kind of make that broken up a little bit so it looks like kind of the implications of craters there. Yeah. If I get out of line here a little bit, I can take a clean brush and kind of push my color back in there. You can choose to add like a little cloud here. Remember, keep clouds just like water, keep them horizontal. If you go vertical or too much, they won't be believable. Clouds are usually darker at the bottom, unless of course they have a bright light underneath them. Which ours in a way does, but not directly. And they're going to be more shaded by the moon right there. I've added some white watercolor here. You can use gouache paint. You could even use acrylic paint for this little extra I'm about to add. I'm really going to add a lot of water here. I don't want it to be opaque, which means I can't see through it. I really want it to be light. Let's go ahead and try it. See if it's too... No, that's good. And I'm just going to kind of wave it around the bottom. I'll bring it up. I'm creating what might look like fog. Okay, now I've added a little more white because I want it to be a little more kind of bright at the bottom to look like where it's thicker fog. Okay, now that everything's dry, I am ready to not only remove my masking fluid here, but remove my surrounding tape. Don't forget to sign your work when you're finished. Here we go. To remove masking fluid, there's a multitude of ways that people do it. Sometimes people use an eraser. I usually just use my finger. I find it to be pretty efficient. And I just got clean water here, and I'm just going to go around the edge. Here we go. Go around the edge a little bit and break that up. Because again, as I've been talking through the whole video, I've talked about if something's too perfect, it really sticks out in a landscape, which is maybe what you like. But for me, I'm gonna soften that. And there we have it. Okay, time to remove the tape. When you remove tape, sometimes it will tear your paper. So that way, in order to avoid that, we pull out. As long as you pull out, if your paper does rip, it won't rip into your image. If you're pulling up, it can rip straight into that image and ruin your whole picture. Okay, there we have it. We're finished. I hope you enjoyed learning with me today. If you'd like to learn more, I'll be offering a 4-week interactive landscape painting course with Branson Regional Arts Council. Right away when you sign up, you'll have access to our thought-free, hands-free shopping list, as well as some pre-instructional videos where you can learn about the tips and tools of the trade, some basic beginner's watercolor techniques, and a landscape lesson that you can practice those newfound techniques on. Once you're comfortable with your materials, you can join me for a weekly online live demonstration of a lesson. Each week I'll teach a brand new landscape lesson where you can join me and other classmates, ask questions, show me your work, and watch me paint live. More about me, the artist. I've been working with watercolors for 15 plus years. I started at age 11 and sold my first piece at age 13. I continued my art education at MSU, earned my BSED in Arts and Design, and continued on to teach high school art at Forsyth High School for 4 years. After that, I started pursuing life full-time as an artist, teaching with Branson Regional Arts Council, and of course selling my own work. I look forward to teaching you, and I hope to see you soon. Thanks.